Are you ready to perform at your highest potential? Welcome to the Performance Matters podcast from GP Strategies, your talent transformation partner. In each episode, we'll interview industry experts and explore best practices and innovative insights to help your organization improve performance. What are some of the ways that you're seeing organizations leverage AI to solve problems? And by that, I mean business objectives and things. So I'd love your insight because I know you've been so active in this world. So what are you seeing in that way, Sanchita?
Sure. The topic of AI could be very overwhelming and their applications could be really varied. So, what I like to do is I just broke it down into four different components. One, you
Okay.
can use AI to respond. You can also use AI to recommend. You can use AI to go ahead and render various deliverables and tasks. And you can also use AI to resolve. So the four R's of AI, as I
The
put it,
four
as
R's.
you
Okay. Are you
see,
gonna have a
recommend.
book on this one? I'm curious. That has a ring to it right there. I like that.
Yeah, if Matt partners with me, sure.
Well, I think can't you use AI to make the book, Sanchita? I mean, come on
Yeah,
now.
I think that's totally on the
Okay,
table.
so let's double back on that. You said the four ways: respond, recommend, render, and resolve. Okay, so I think that's a lot of juice for us to squeeze out of the AI fruit today here. So let's start with respond. What are some of the things that you're seeing of AI at bringing practical value to organizations?
Okay. So when AI is to respond to user queries, earlier it was just retrieval, knowledge retrieval. You ask a question and how accurately I can get you answers. And classical Google kind of scenarios where all that you're looking for is high relevance, high accuracy, and low latency responses. However, with generative AI, that has changed. It's no more retrieval, but it's retrieval augmented generative output, which means we just don't need a bunch of search results. What we want is can you consume all the search results and give an answer? So in L&D, it could be learning in the flow of work where you are looking for answers while you're working. But in the support world, it could actually be formulating responses to tickets that are being raised that could directly go to the customer or be assistive. The other thing is, it's
Interesting.
not just about knowledge retrieval and knowledge generation, but it can also be used for knowledge capture. Because when the answers are not there in documentation, you want it to be, there should be a mechanism for questions to be escalated to the right SMEs. And when the SMEs respond, the Q&A pair is put back into the index so that you have a living, breathing, growing body of knowledge in the organization.
That sounds like a snowball almost, right? As you're combining no knowledge, then you're getting some of that tacit knowledge layered in it, and then pretty soon you've got a pretty strong response mechanism right there. So, Matt, from your side, I'm gonna, couch this like you're our crossing guard today. So you're the AI crossing guard. What's your response to this? Put up your sign. What are some of the things that we need to be thinking about in terms of this very exciting response snowball?
No, I think I think it's a good way to bring it in. Let me kind of throw another one out here, another example that shows a different cross section and how I might bring some of those crossing elements into it. And Sanchita, jump in as we go through. But I think of like one of the things organizations really struggle with is having really good, consistent, high quality manager to employee conversations. The performance development conversation, it's always difficult in organizations to get done. So if our goal or task is say, let's have really consistently people have them and they complete them, and they're actually really focused on good, insightful conversations that drive performance. So we think about that as how would I begin to apply AI using those four R's as we kind of go through it. So let's say, for example, like in our company, we do quarterly performance reviews. And so it starts off and it says, my personalized AI agent says, Hey, Matt, I see that you do not have a performance conversation set with Tom. Tom reports to me. Would you like me to get something on the book? So we can go through our calendars because it has access to both of that data. It can help put a calendar on the meeting and says, hey, look for openings, Matt and Tom, performance conversation. It can then go out and go and say, here's the last, you say we're in the third quarter, it'll go out to the second quarter, it'll pull the data, say, here's what your last conversation was. It'll look at it and it'll summarize what was there and said, here were the key things you talked about being able to achieve that. It prepares it as me, as the manager, to go in. At the same time, it prepares a summary for Tom to say, Tom, remember these were the key points you talked about last time. What are some opportunities? Can you collect and share back? So Tom would have the opportunity to respond and then be able to share, and it expands on my manager dossier with it. At the same time, as the manager getting ready for the conversation, it says, here are 3 or 4 really great resources on having a great performance conversation. Don't forget the 7-step checklist that we have in the organization, but here's some, some new things coming out with thought leaders. Are there any areas that you would like me to go find additional information on? It goes out and it pulls new information for us. At the same time with Tom, hey, Tom, here's how I think from an employee standpoint to get the most out of a conversation. Is there anything you would like? So it's helping both sides of the conversation to prepare for a really great conversation between Tom and myself. We now have new data, new insights to bring to a conversation. So we're not just walking into a cold meeting like, why are we here? What have we been doing? I can't remember. I've
Right.
been so busy. We actually are better prepared to have a really good conversation. So now the AI bot is also able to actually listen, and we're able to kind of have a transcript of the meeting. We're able to go back and forth. Tom and I have our conversation. At the end of it, the bot is able to come back and summarize. Here's what I thought the conversation was. Here were the key points. May even recommend based on what we heard as you were outlining some. Now, here's the key. As the human, myself and Tom, we would actually review this and validate it. It's not an automagic, boom, it's done. I've documented it and file it, but it
Right.
allows us to have a follow-up conversation coming out of that. And what we then can say, all right, out of that piece, it says, okay, we added and we kind of crafted. Tom and I agree with it. The bot can then make sure that it gets filed appropriately in the HR systems. But what then after our meeting, it can then flip into the nudge position between us. Tom and I could have set up a recommendation on saying, here's how what we think our follow-ups are. Let's do a check-in 2 weeks from now on this, check in on the status of that. And then the bot can actually look at and promote and be aware of maybe what Tom is working on, what I'm working on, capture some of that data in preparation for the next one. So the idea is about it's the goal is to have better meetings, better prepared for a great conversation. And the idea is to be able to consistently have it. So it's remove barriers, because the biggest challenge is I couldn't find time. I didn't get it on the calendar. I didn't go get the materials. I didn't document it. All that extra stuff that gets in the way of having a good conversation. Now, Tom and I can have a really good conversation, cover and impact what he needs, his elements, and what the AI is enabling us to do really well is bring in data patterns or things that we're looking at that we just don't have insights for. So that's one of the things. So, if, like, for example, let's say one of the things I kind of learned, which was like a productivity tip that's come from big data, is I actually got a productivity coach that shared to me and said, well, Matt, one of the patterns we're seeing is that your calendar fills up 2.5 weeks in advance. I was doing time management where I was trying to block my calendar a week out in advance. What it had was actually a year's worth of data to look at the patterns in my life of which I had no visibility. And with one data point, I was able to actually start to better control and get in front of my calendar, affecting my productivity. Now, imagine you apply that type of productivity to say, Tom's like, I can't seem to get enough time. I'm not able to do this. Well, let's look at what we're seeing from data wise. Can you actually draw insights from large pieces of data? So I think I covered the 4 R's in there, Sanchita, but
I mean, it sounds like you've thought about this a little bit. I mean, quite frankly, you actually slid really nicely into the second R, which is recommend. But I want to double back here, Sanchita, on the respond concept, because it sounded like Matt was mentioning quite a bit of, one very powerful use case, which is not just responding and finding knowledge, but also lifting up or empowering a manager and a direct report to have a more productive relationship. And is that something that you're finding in practice just on the respond element?
Yes. So, first of all, I just loved what Matt said because the recommendation, if you see, he has talked about four different types of recommendations. And I'm going to come back to respond, but I just wanted to summarize because
Yeah.
we are talking about, and we call it the ICAP model. You recommend insights, you recommend content, you recommend actions, and you recommend people because that he is booking up, getting booked 2.5 weeks in advance is an insight. What he does with it is an action recommendation. And to follow through the action, here's some content that can help you. And if the content is not there, here are some people who can help you. So that covers the loop of recommendations. And while that is the recommendation output, what we are doing is from the input, there are multiple sources of inputs that can come in. In sales, it could be highly transactional. We can look into data and say, hey, here's a salesperson. He's not meeting quota because his deal sizes are very small. Here is a guy who is not prospecting enough. And there's another lady out there who's not closing enough. So we can use ML models to identify the patterns of transactional gaps or skill gaps that they have and be able to recommend the right insights, action, people, and content recommendation for them. Whereas what Matt was saying is being able to find those insights from content and conversations. So, not transaction and structured data, but unstructured data and patterns, and be able to provide recommendation. So, it's very powerful how now we can put together for performance management. But from a respond point of view, when people ask a question, if a manager needs some tips to talk to, have a crucial conversation with an employee, at that point of time they don't need training. So when they ask, they are trying to get a response, hey, how to talk to someone in a performance situation, you don't want a bunch of training out there, you don't have the time. So the response
Right.
should be now summarized answer, a formulated answer that you find deep within documents. And we specifically have abilities not only to find answers from deep within documents, but from videos, data, and
Hmm.
HTML as well. So you can get answers, and here's a 2 hour video. Watch the video from the 15th minute. Your answer is here. By the way, here's a formulated answer. So
That
it's
is just in
important.
time. And, quite frankly, just to put a little plug in for MPlay, that was one of the things that prompted me to say, Sanchita, we need to have you on here because I've seen some of the demonstrations and my head was exploding with just the possibilities here of furthering an organization just on respond, right? We're on the first of four ways right now. Just that magic of being able to put in a query and not just get like, no shot to Google. They've been very successful, right? But 20 years ago that was amazing to get a bunch of hot links, but now you're coming back with contextual answers, and that's amazing. And like you said, if you can go to the 15th minute versus having to ask someone to scrub through that to get the answer on how to create a pivot table, then it's a good day, right? So that's great. The Performance Matters podcast is brought to you by GP Strategies. Together, we can create a world where business excellence makes possibilities achievable. You can subscribe to the show anywhere you get podcasts or listen on our website at gpstrategies.com.